A very warm welcome to our new series, The Global Health Show. We are, in this show, going to take you on a health journey that has the potential to completely change your life. I'm Liz Gunn, and with me is John Coombs, who has a long-term background as a health and social and eco-entrepreneur, as well as having spent over 40 years researching ancient knowledge in contemporary and cutting-edge sciences. So, John, what is your vision for this show?
The main thing, Liz, is to empower people. A lot of people I see are feeling quite desperate, they're fatigued, they're run down, they don't have a lot of hope about life. And that can turn around quite quickly. We can get remarkably good results very, very quickly with people if they change their lifestyle, adopt a new nutritional plan, and just take life a little bit more seriously in terms of their own personal well-being. Instead of putting other people ahead of themselves, start to think the first thing I need to do is look after myself. I can be 100 times more effective if I look after myself. So we're going to bring together some world authorities.
Yes, and we will talk about that in a moment,
Yep.
but it's almost the idea of taking perhaps average health or below average health and whipping it up to top health. That's the idea of well-being, that's a new level.
There's no upper limit in health. There's obviously a lower limit, but there's no upper limit. So we know from some of the great people throughout history just what you can achieve in a single lifetime, and we're aiming to encourage other people to do the same thing. The world has many challenges. We can actually master most of these challenges if we work collectively together from a place of well-being.
Wonderful. So to get the best health, you need to hear from the best in their fields, and that's what we're offering you, as John says. We will talk to top scientists and researchers, best-selling worldwide authors, and health experts in their specific areas. We're also bringing in people who you can watch being taken through these wellbeing programs, including a world champion triathlete, a Lord of the Rings star, and a high-flying business luminary. In today's show, we discuss coming back from open heart surgery and building new health with film and stage actor Bruce Hopkins. But first today, a man who will be offering his valuable insights in each of our 10 shows. Dr. Bruce Lipton is admired for many aspects of his life, including his pioneering stem cell research in the 1960s, right through to his current role as the global champion of the new frontier science of epigenetics. Bruce Lipton's also widely admired for his courage in stepping away from a safe and lucrative career as a medical professor at Stanford University after he realized that while medical science has its valuable place in the world, managing accident and disease, there is a much wider scope for building up health. Like John, his vision is for building the well-being of each of us before we find ourselves at any risk of falling into sickness. So it's a very warm welcome to Dr. Bruce Lipton. Welcome, it's lovely to talk to you. And your book, Spontaneous Evolution, is very inspiring, Bruce, as I'm sure many have told you. There's a line in it I wanted to start with. You say the process of evolution can be seen as an environment constantly seeking to rebalance itself. Tell me about that. That's inner and outer in all of us, in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, basically, what we understand about life, it lives in a very defined parameters. Not too high temperature, not too low temperature, just the right amount of oxygen versus carbon dioxide. So there's an environment that's just right. But when organisms are introduced into the environment and are growing in the environment, they're using up metabolites, they're throwing waste matter back in, they're influencing other organisms. So every organism comes in the environment seems to offset the balance to a certain degree. And then what nature has a tendency to do is to bring in another organism, a new one, to try and bring into balance. So, I mean, a very simple understanding is this. Before there were animals, there were only plants. I say, well, yeah, but plants give off oxygen as part of their cycle of photosynthesis. So plants are giving off oxygen. Well, what happens is if you just have plants, there's a point where the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere becomes so great because it's the waste product in the sense of the plant, that what actually happened in history is the earth caught fire. It caught fire a few times because of a lightning strike in a very high rich oxygen environment, the whole thing flammable. So in order to keep the oxygen level from going too high, animals were introduced because animals use the oxygen and then give off carbon dioxide, which is actually used by the plant. So all of a sudden it says when you bring plants and animals in the same time, you can keep balance because the plant's excess oxygen used by the animals excess carbon dioxide used by the plants, and next thing you know, we're in perfect balance again. So that's how nature does it.
So it's an incredibly optimistic view, Bruce. You could say that all of this climate change and climate warming will be rebalanced because the earth always looks for balance.
It will always seek balance. And the question is, will we be here as part of the balancing act? That is still a question that's up in the air, because right now it's like 50-50. The extinction is looming, meaning that humans have, you see, every organism that comes in, as I said, brings more balance in and more power in influencing balance. So you can say, we're humans in this. I say, well, pretty much at the top of the pile. I say, but what relevance is that? They have more power in balancing the environment than anything underneath them. I say, well, this is really good, except if you didn't understand that humans were supposed to bring balance, that same power could be used in a negative way and destroy the environment. This is what we're finding right now, that humans have altered the ecosystem so much in a negative way that we are threatening our own existence as well as the web of life.
And many people feel helpless and hopeless there. One of the things is to raise the level of health. I know, John, this is what your whole mission in global health is. Get individuals so healthy, thinking so clearly, that they want to help the greater good. Would you agree with that? 100%.
The idea is this, there's a tendency that, oh, there's so many problems in the world. Let's go out and fix the problems. The old hippie days, they had a saying, before you go out and save the world, take care of your own backyard. And this is what I think John is really trying to emphasize. Before I can go out and say, let's bring health to the world, if I'm not healthy, then what contribution am I offering? So first I become healthy, and then once I live and I'm becoming healthy, I create health in my environment. Each one of us then creating health collectively adds up to this thing. You can't send a bunch of people that are not healthy out into the world and say, make the world healthy. They're not healthy to begin with.
They're not balanced. No. You've just summed up our whole program. Thank you. Our
oh
whole
my God,
series.
So many minutes. We can replay this now over and over.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I want to talk about how individuals do that process and what you're talking about in this book and all your books about the belief processes that can be tweaked, if you like, so that you take much more responsibility for the self.
Well, yeah, because look at it this way. We have been programmed through the nature of the science and the nature of the industries that profit from us to have us feel that we are powerless. Now, I have no control over my health. I have no control over this or that. So generally, what have people been programmed with? Irresponsibility. Why should I be responsible for my health? If my genes are going to give me cancer no matter what I do, then I don't care what I do. And then we program irresponsibility in, and then nobody's responsible for anything. And then it turns out the whole thing's falling apart because the primary understanding was we are responsible for our lives and those around us.
So the definition of epigenetics, which is something that you work on, Bruce, so much. Could you tell us how you sum that up?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting because what I was teaching in medical school was a concept called genetics, genetic control, which is what everybody believes. Oh, my life is under genetic control, which means control by genes. Well, then think about it. As far as we know, we didn't pick the genes we came with. If we don't like the traits or the genes that we have, I'm sorry, you can't do anything about that. You've got these genes, and you can't control the genes. Well, if I buy into that story that says, my God, my life is somewhat predetermined by my genes, and I have no power over them.
It creates a helplessness, a victim sort of mentality.
Victim, and it's very interesting because on a business model, if somebody perceives they're a victim, then somebody else is going to come in and say, I'm the rescuer. And if you have a rescuer, then the victim says, I will give you what I have for you to rescue me. I have no control over my life, but you know, and therefore, how much money do you want? And all of a sudden, you start to realize how the so-called rescuers came in, but not to really help us, but to capitalize on the fact that we believe we're powerless, and we offer, money to those that are going to help us.
So what's happening individually is echoed on a societal level. John, what's your experience in the clinic that you're seeing?
Well, this is where most people come in with a sense of lack of knowledge of these issues, and this is the great thing about Bruce's work. It has given us the science, because Bruce did the actual research, broke it down individual cells and petri dishes, and did the research, took the genes out of the cell and watched their behaviour. We didn't have access to the science until Bruce started publishing his books and made them available.
Such as The Biology of Belief.
Biology of Belief, Spontaneous Evolution, and then Honeymoon Effect. The science is now available because Bruce, as we said before, taught doctors and broke it down to small bites.
And Bruce, how is it that you are finding things that are simply not being discussed on a more on a more open level, say in our medical profession or our pharmaceutical profession or politically even, what is it that's driving you, Bruce? What's taken you out of being just a straight doctor and a comfortable life into this driven passion for waking people up?
Because I saw that the new science, which is epigenetics, which we'll talk about in the future, is a science where it turns out that we control our gene activity. So all of a sudden I saw that I've dedicated my life to go teach in a medical school to tell people that they're victims, and then the research in my laboratory says, well, this is a completely false assumption, that this is not true at all. And all of a sudden I started to recognize, oh my God, we were masters, but we didn't know it. And once knowing that, I said, no, I stopped teaching. I had tenure. I walked out of the university. I said, I can't teach this anymore. I know I'm teaching incorrect information. My motivation is what? To give people the freedom of knowledge. Knowledge is power. And most importantly, a lack of knowledge is a lack of power. And without knowing about the nature of epigenetics, we have been disempowered to believe that we are victims. And just the awareness of epigenetics allows us to take power back over our lives. And once we do that, the health crisis that we see in our world today will disappear overnight.
Thank you so much, Bruce. We're going to explore a lot of those themes in programs to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Bruce.
Now we talk to actor Bruce Hopkins about his quest to return to optimal health after major surgery. So Bruce, tell me what brought you into Global Health Clinic.
I had at the start of the year, end of January, I had a major medical procedure, open heart surgery, to remove an aneurysm that was discovered at the end of last year, totally by chance. My aorta, my ascending aorta had blown out. So I had what became termed a valve-sparing aortic root replacement. So they've replaced that pipe above my heart.
And it's major surgery. To give some idea, I wouldn't normally ask this of my guests, but could you show us that scar and how long it is?
I'm going to speak to some of your other guests to see if you do normally ask this one.
So it's a large
it's
scar.
open heart, yeah. So it's,
So you come from a background of extreme fitness, let's say, in the acting and dancing world. I remember you in Limbs when I was at university, and since then you've done what? You've been in Lord of the Rings in a very physical role. Tell us a bit about your state of fitness before this.
I like to think I keep really fit. You know, for my age, especially, I'm not trying to get to the Olympics, but I exercise pretty much every day. So I do my own yoga. Every now and then I get myself to a yoga class to touch base with the technique a bit, but I do my own stuff at home. Ocean swim. I've done some of the state ocean swim series, etc., and I ocean swim whenever the tides are right where I live, and do steps running. So I try to run like 1 kilometre of uphill steps 3-4 times a week.
And let's put it in context. In the Lord of the Rings, you were taken on in a role. Tell us a bit about that, because of your physicality as an actor, weren't you?
Yeah. There was a particular point in the shoot where they got to where this King Theoden, the horse riders, the Rohirrim, they were starting to have some major battle scenes, and they realised that there was a particular character that I think that they'd cast that wasn't going to be, he's not a big physical actor, so they needed to get another character in who was going to be able to be physical in battle scenes.
And your character's name was?
Gamling.
Gamling. So
gambling without the bling.
Just for people who might want to look that up. But I ask all of that because you would have been the last person who would have expected heart problems. You would have probably put yourself in a very fit, healthy category. Would that be fair?
Yeah. We do have some family, history. Like my mum has had issues when she was a young girl, major stuff, and she's lived with, been on warfarin for years and years, and that's the kind of thing I want to avoid. I don't want to be sort of relying on medications all the time. And unfortunately, my brother, who is 4 years older than me, he died of an aneurysm in his groin, coming up 5 years ago. So there's a kind of a little history background there, but certainly wasn't expecting. I'd been getting checked up, some scanning after my brother died. I got told, because I was a male and the age I was, that I should probably just get some scans, and it didn't pick anything up. This came out of the blue.
And of course, that's the whole emphasis of this program, getting back to what you said about Wolfram. We're trying to help people to maintain or improve health before they get sick.
Yeah.
So what is it that you've learnt so far? You're really in the early stages of this journey about getting your health to a premium level now. What have you learnt so far coming in here, Bruce?
Well, essentially, kind of don't take it for granted. You know, you think you're living a health. I like to think I eat fairly healthily, etc., etc. You know, along with the exercise, and I try. Many years ago, I started meditation, so I try to not allow myself to get into stress scenarios in my mind. You know, it happens, but at least I'm aware of it, and I think so. I kind of, yeah, you can delude yourself.
Well, it's not so much delusion. You had already taken steps. You'd taken responsibility for your own health, which is the first step on the ladder. But you're climbing that ladder of health now, aren't you? You're wanting to take it to a higher level. What have you looked at so far?
Well, it's been amazing. Well, the really cool thing was doing like the hair follicle tests, and you know, because they just give you there it is, there's the report, and it's science based. You know, it's not some kind of airy fairy stuff. So
yes.
It's when you're looking at it in black and white on the paper in that report, you go, whoa, okay.
Can you remember what first struck you with your report? Because it's a 30-page report. It's fairly substantial.
Yeah. Just the things that become like a priority, you know. So you suddenly go, oh, okay, I've got some priorities.
Can you give us an example of one, or is that
my
too
amino
personal?
acids were kind of lacking in certain areas. So
and that has a big impact on hormonal balance, which is so essential for sleep or well-being.
One of my things for many years now, I do overnight talkback radio occasionally, and that screws up my sleep big time. And I was never for many years I haven't been like a deep, heavy sleeper anyway. So kind of this stuff is making me realise, okay, I need to address some of this stuff. You know.
So what are some of the ways you've addressed it, getting that cell wellbeing report? What steps have you taken in here since then, Bruce?
Were you able to directly look at some of the products that they talk about not, you know, like priorities of don't eat certain types of foods, and also mostly it's interesting because it's a lot of it's around the nutrition side of it, you know, liquor.
Yes.
and it's quite interesting because it'll be quite specific. You know, the latest one came through different to the first one that said beer. Don't, you know, so lay off beer. And I haven't been a beer drinker much anyway.
Yes.
So, but it's just really interesting to see that. And then the first one, when I first came here, picked up radiation. You know, and I'd just been having X-rays and all that kind of stuff. So it was quite interesting to.
Well, we'll be following you through just from 3 to 4 weeks in. Are you feeling a little bit better?
Are you
noticing a difference?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. We'll be following you through this, Bruce. I'll be talking to you again. Thank you. Now we discuss with Dr. Daryl Turner the importance of thyroid health and how to improve and maintain it. Well, Daryl, welcome. You are from Arizona in a way, but you're actually from Napier, aren't you? What took a young man from Napier all those years ago in the 60s over to America to end up working as a leading specialist in thyroid health? What's been your journey?
Well, I was into research as a scientist, and what I discovered is that in the field of hormones, no one had solved the thyroid problem. In other words, many people, that is 80% of the population, actually have a thyroid condition, but they walk around under this category called subclinical hypothyroidism. That is where they have the symptoms, but their blood tests appear to be normal, and they suffer for their entire lives. I decided to tackle the problems, solve it, so that a medical doctor can identify, dose, and titrate the patient to the right amount of medication.
That's a little bit like Ed Hillary saying, I decided to climb Mount Everest. That's a huge thing to tackle. Where did you begin, Daryl?
I began by researching all the different ways of identifying thyroid conditions, and I decided that reflexes and symptoms were the best way to do it. In fact, on my research, I came across a statement by a very famous doctor called Dr. A.J. Bayliss, head of the Endocrinology Society in England, head of the Lister Hospital Department of Endocrinology, the endocrinologist of the royal family, and he stated to the Endocrinology Society a few years ago that none of the blood tests were accurate. That is, none. The only thing that was accurate was symptoms and reflexes.
So let's look at those. Let's look at those symptoms, because people at home watching might recognize some of what you say are the leading symptoms of thyroid imbalance or lack of health there. What sorts of symptom groups are you talking about?
Well, the main symptoms that you can easily identify, even when you look at a person, is where the weight distribution is, if they're tired and lethargic, do they have cold extremities like the tip of the nose, feet and hand are cold. In other words, are they wearing a jumper or a jersey when everyone is standing around in their shirts? And their general well-being. It affects the quality of their life.
What's the weight distribution that you mentioned? Could you elaborate?
Weight distribution happens around the middle. It's called the 3 spare tires. And quite often people are quite slim, but they still have these spare tires or even little tires around their middle.
So tell me where you took your research then. How did you start to solve all this puzzle of problems with the thyroid?
Well, I decided that the neurotransmitters, that's the brain, plays a major part. So I decided to measure the speed of the brain. I decided to measure accurately within, in the field of milliseconds, the speed of the reflexes. And I decided to starting to gather what sort of symptoms people had. And of course, it lowers the resting metabolic rate. That is why you have the weight gain around the middle. So I decided to measure the resting metabolic rate.
And what were your results with the patients with whom you were working, with your subjects on whom you were testing these things?
Well, I actually did clinical trials on 2,200 people over 3 years, and I collected all the data, and I employed a person who analyzes the data to actually come up with a formula that runs through my computerized system that actually tells you with 98.5% accuracy what's happening with the thyroid and how much dosage you need.
So this has been really scientifically tested on a wide group. It's been proven. You're finding good results. What's the uptake been in the medical profession, Daryl?
The uptake in the medical profession, let's just talk about United Arab Emirates, for instance. They have decided basically to make this a standard protocol for the entire country because it's a leading cause of diabetes, stroke, heart attack. The list goes on and on and on. The medical health systems, for instance, in the United Arab Emirates, cannot afford the 50% diabetic rate that they have. And they decided to do something about it. I was invited over there by the ruling family. I put all 121 members into treatment with quite incredible and remarkable results. And now this is going to become standard protocol throughout the entire country.
So that raises the issue of the treatments for this. Once you identify and you know that there is a problem, what do you do to help this thyroid become much stronger and healthier?
Well, I actually have developed the medications and a range of medications to treat the thyroid, because you cannot treat the thyroid by itself. You've got to treat the adrenals, the iodine, the sleep. So you've got to treat all what we call the core hormones. So I developed a core hormone system that actually performs very well. By the way, during my clinical trials, I also developed a treatment for a thing called reverse T3, which is caused by stress. And of course, I'd also discovered how to put Hashimoto's into remission and how to cure it. And I also have the treatment protocol for Graves. These are autoimmune diseases that are associated with hypothyroidism.
This is sophisticated stuff for a young man from Napier. I'd like to bring John in here just to talk about what you're seeing in Global Health Clinic as far as thyroid problems in New Zealand.
Daryl, with the Thyroflex test that we've done, pretty much everybody's been underactive or hypothyroid. Does that correlate with the figures that you're dealing with?
Yes, yeah, in fact, the Broda Barnes and Terry Herdog, the #1 and #2 thyroid experts in the world, estimated in their book that it was about 80%.
Yeah.
We have found that it is about 80%
Yeah,
in random trials, random testing, and in clinics like yours.
Thank you, Daryl. That's wonderful to get those links of the symptoms of thyroid, the heart issue that is a problem for many people in New Zealand. And I think we'll be following you through in future programs. Dr. Daryl Turner, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Daryl. Nice to see you again.
And so we come to the end of our first Global Health Show in this series, listening to Dr. Bruce Lipton explaining the need for self-responsibility, that we are responsible for our lives, that we're not victims to our genes, that we no longer need to cede our own power to others, was for me very inspiring, and I hope for you also. On our next show, we talk about the role of the heart with Bruce, and then the importance of adrenal health with Dr. James Wilson, who's authored a pioneering book on adrenal fatigue. We also talk to Vivian Berry, who explains the crucial need to integrate our heart with our brain and our gut to manage stress and to achieve optimal health. And on that note, I wish you all optimal health. I'm Liz Gunn.